work on our statuses now. All right. So you can see that we are all done with our user stories, but we still have a little bit of work left to do. We have to investigate some things. So we did investigate how to make a drop-down within a drop-down. All right, you can see that here, drop-down within a drop-down. All right, and we were able to do that. Okay, so we are now going to work on this how to best handle statuses. Okay, so I am going to first look at how things are, like what's happening here, okay? Because I set that up when I originally worked on the project on the front end. So we can kind of keep going from that, and then we'll move on. Okay, so if you look here, I have this text component with feature.completed user stories out of feature.user story count, okay? So let's go ahead and console log my feature, because right now those properties are not in existence, okay? But that's what we need ultimately here, right? So I have my user stories, description, ID, name, and then within user stories I have my tasks array, okay? But I don't have the completed user stories property and the user count story count property, all right? So I could do the logic on the front end, right? Essentially what I want to do is I want to go into the user stories and I want to see how large the length of this array, which is just one, right? So that would be my user story count. And then I want to see how many are completed, okay? So then for there, I would go into the tasks array and I would look at how many tasks there are, how many tasks are completed. If all of the tasks are completed, then the user story is completed, right? But that's a lot of logic to add to the front end. So what I want to do is I actually want to do that on my back end. So that way all I'm doing here is pulling that property, okay? But first I want to replicate this idea, right? Because if you look at our wireframes, we have the statuses here, right? Amount of user stories complete out of total amount. And then here we have amount of tasks complete out of total amount. So we need to add that because you can see that when I open my user story, there's no status count here. So I'm going to go to my user story details accordion and I'm going to copy this component here. And if you look, you can see that we do actually have a text component here for status, but status just doesn't exist, okay? So I could copy and paste in here, right? But we already have the status component and we're already passing in the prop. So we need to find instead what loads this component, which is in the feature modal, okay? And then we're going to change it. So right now, story.status is what status is going to be equal to. Instead, we're going to want it to be equal to story dot, well, let's go ahead and first, oops. All right, so here we have status, but status is not actually going to be a thing. So instead, we want tasks completed, and that's going to be a number. And then we want to say task count, which is going to be a number. Let's make sure we mirror the way we're doing it in our feature box. So user story count, completed user stories. Okay, so user story count would be task count, that makes sense. And then we're gonna say completed tasks. That way we have the same kind of wording, all right? So now that we added that, we can say story dot completed tasks, okay? Out of, let's copy this. Tasks count, okay? So now you'll see undefined out of undefined, which is okay, all right, for now. So now we are going to go ahead and we are going to go to our project.service and we're going to start trying to figure out how to create the logic, okay, to create these numbers here, okay, here and here, all right. So essentially, we are going to want to add a helper function, okay? So I'm going to call this add statuses to project, okay? And we are going to pass in a project, and then we are going to do some magic on the project, and then we are going to return the project, okay? And this is going to be of type project. All right. So now we want to add that to our get project by ID here, okay? So instead of returning the project right away, we're going to say const project is equal to await, right? We're going to get the project. And then after we get the project, we're going to say return this dot add statuses to project, okay? Within the user, get users projects, all right, we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to say const projects is going to be equal to go and find the projects, right? And then we are going to say projects dot for each project, and we are going to say this return, so we're actually going to map here. So for each just loops through it, but there's no returning. Map will return it. So we're going to say return projects.map project, and then we're going to say return this dot add status to project. Okay, so now what is happening, okay, is we are going to get our projects, all right, then we're going to look at each project and add the statuses to the project and return that. And then here, and that is the function that's called on the initial load, okay, so nothing should change because we didn't add any statuses, so this should still work as the same, okay. And then here we're going to be getting the project by ID, and then before returning the project, add statuses to it, which again, and that's when we, go through and say add feature 3. All right, that's when this is being called, okay? And as you can see, it just looks normal. All right, let's go ahead and inspect because we should have our feature. All right, so we have a bunch of features and these are our objects. All right, I don't want to do each feature on its own because I think that's going to start getting a little bit confusing. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my feature box and I'm going to get rid of this console log. And I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. I'm going to go to my feature modal. Is this where we have project come in? Nope. I'm going to go to my project page. And I am going to here console log the project. All right, so now we are on load, okay, or on change of anything. We're going to get this project, and then we can drill down into here to get the status, okay. All right. So now we're going to go back. And we are going to, also just a heads up, I don't think my migration works properly with getting rid of the status because it's popped up there and on project. So at some point we'll have to redo that. But for now, it's not being used for anything. So it's not that big of a deal. Or did I add it? I think I actually add it on, here, wait, let me look. We'll figure it out later. Okay, so project service. So now we are going to start editing this function here. Okay, so what we want to do first is we want to add the status to the project, or the features, right? So the project itself doesn't have a status, or does it? Oh, it does up here, so eventually we'll have to add that too. Okay, but we are going to start with the features, all right, because I want to get this page done. All right, so we are going to loop through our features. So we're going to say project.features.for each, and then we're going to look at each feature. Okay. And we are going to add a status to each one. Okay, so we're going to say feature. I'm not going to worry about adding a status right now. Okay, so we are going to add our properties, right? So we want feature at user story count. Okay, and that's going to be equal to feature dot user stories dot length. Okay, so now if I return, okay, I get my project object, and then I get my features, and you can now see my user story count is up there, except I spelled it wrong. So let's try again. And now you see that it's populating, right? Perfect. All right, so what's the other one that we want? We want to have completed user stories. Okay, so then we're going to add feature at completed user stories equals 0. Okay, we're just going to hard code it for 0 because we actually need to loop through the user stories to get the tasks and the counts. Okay, so right now we're going to start with 0, but now that we have that property, that fills in. Nice. All right, I also want to add whether or not we've started, okay, the feature. Okay, so if I've started the feature, then I'm going to have it in progress, because technically the feature could be started with still 0 out of 2 user stories done, because I could have made, right, see here, my user story, if I add another task here, task 2. So this task is done. This one is to do, right? So technically this user story is not done, and this user story is not done. So we have 0 out of 2 done, but we have started it because we have 1 task that's complete, okay? So what we're also gonna track then is we're gonna track feature at started, and we're going to say false, okay? So that is going to tell us what we're gonna, at the end, use this feature started to tell us whether or not we want to move this to in progress, what our status is actually going to be. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is now loop through user stories, so that way we can get these 2 fields edited. Okay, so we're going to do now const user stories is equal to feature dot user stories. Okay, then we're going to say user stories dot for each story. All right, so now we're going to go through each of the user stories, okay? And we're going to have a very similar thing that we did up here, right? So we are going to look at const, we're going to say user, we're going to say story at task count, right, is going to be equal to, should just be singular, task count is going to be equal to story dot tasks dot length. Okay, so now let's go ahead and refresh this page and let's see if that just popped up. Yep, so see we have 2 tasks here, all right, and we have 1 task here. Nice. Okay, then we are going to say story at completed tasks is going to be equal to so now we're going to actually look within that tasks array. So we can say story.task.filter. So we're going to filter through, okay, and we're going to look at each task. Filter returns something. So we're going to say return the task, right? If task.status is equal to done. okay? Because we want to essentially get all of the completed statuses, okay? So then we can add on to the end the length. So this filter is going to return all of the tasks that have the status equal done, and then afterwards we're going to get the length of it. So now we should have the completed tasks should be the count of the amount of tasks with the status of done. So if I refresh my page and I open this up, now I have 1 out of 2 tasks done, perfect, and 0 out of 1 tasks done. Beautiful, okay? Moving on. Okay, so now we want to use this here, okay? Because we want to know whether or not the feature is started, and that's based on the tasks, okay? So we are going to say, actually now here, we're going to say const completed tasks is equal to that, okay? And then we can go ahead and say story at completed tasks is equal to completed tasks. And then we can say if completed tasks is greater than 0, right? That means that we have started working on that feature. So then we will edit feature at started, and we're gonna make that true. Okay. So now we don't have feature started working over here because we don't have that on the front end. But you can see started now is true for this one, started is false for this one, and started is false for this one. So even though 0 out of 2 user stories are done, we have started it because we have 1 out of 2 tasks, 1 out of 3 total tasks. So let's go ahead and return to that feature box and try to add that logic. Okay. So we actually want to go one step back because we're not dealing with the feature box, we're dealing with the page. So we're going to go to the project page. Okay, and we're going to go through where we're determining, right? So here we have feature status is hard-coded to do. So we instead are going to oh, you know what? I think I'm also going to do this on the back end. Okay, so before we return the project, all right, but while we are still looping through the features, we are now going to add a feature status. Okay, so we are going to say if feature is not started, okay, then we are going to say feature at status is equal to do. Okay. Otherwise, right, now we have to deal with the other 2 use cases of whether we're in progress or done. Okay, so I'm going to look at done on the other one because that's easier. So done is going to be feature at user story count. So if the user story count is equal to the completed user stories, that's how we know if the feature is done. Okay, so then we're going to change this to feature at status is equal to, I don't know why we need to write it like that, I'm being silly. Too many if statements in my brain. Done. Okay, otherwise we're going to say feature at status is going to be equal to in progress. Okay, I think I'm actually going to change this because I don't need this started on the front end, so I'm actually going to change this to just a variable, and I'm going to say feature started. Because we don't need to send more, oh, let, my bad. All right, and then we're gonna say if not feature started All right, so now let's go ahead and refresh this. Okay, so let's take a look and we should see feature status is set to do, but that's because it's hard coded to here. Okay, so now let's comment this out and see what happens. Perfect, and this one moves over because it's in progress. Nice, so let's go ahead and actually complete this. Okay, so let's open up my database and I'm going to refresh my tasks so I have all of them. And I'm going to switch these all to done. Let's save that. Let's see what happens when we refresh the page. Okay. So now we have 1 out of 2 done here and 1 out of 1 done here. Which, oh, we don't have our, we'd have to look into that. All right, but let's check on this. All right, oh, we just don't have the logic done yet. Okay, so now our user stories are completed, but we don't have the logic in our backend yet. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. All right, so we still have the completed user stories is hard coded to 0. Okay, so now we need to add that logic. Okay, so our user stories completed is going to be calculated by based on how, if the tasks for each user story are completed, right? So this user story A is completed because 2 out of 2 tasks are completed. So we want to check, okay, we're going to say if task count, if story at task count, there we go, is equal to completed tasks dot length. Completed task is already length, okay? And we also want to make sure that this, let's just do this for now. Okay, then we're going to say that feature at completed user stories plus plus. We're going to increment it by 1. So now let's take a look. Perfect. So this is 2 out of 2, this feature, but if you look, this feature is 1 out of 1, okay? Which is not correct, all right? Because we don't have any tasks, all right? So you can make this however you want, right? Like, so you could make this 1 out of 1, but what I would think is that they haven't even started adding the tasks yet to this one. So I wouldn't want it to say 1 out of 1, and it doesn't make sense too, because if it looks like it's 1 out of 1, then you would want it in progress, but the way we're doing it is based on tasks being completed, right? Okay, so we want to add then another element here. We want to say and tasks story at task count is greater than 0. Okay, so now this flips back to 0 out of 1 because we don't have any tasks, so the user story can't be done if we don't have any tasks. Okay, perfect. All right, so this is looking good to me. All right, so let me add a task here. Task 1, I create my task. Let's exit. All right, so now I have feature 0 out of 1, user 0 out of 1. Let's go ahead and mark this as complete. And, well, first let's add another task actually, because I want to see it go from, all right, so now we have 2 user stories. Okay, so let's refresh again. All right, so I want to see this one go to done. And save. Okay, let's refresh this. So now this one pops into in progress. okay? Because 1 out of 2 is done. All right, and then let's put this one to done. Let's save it. All right, and let's refresh the page and you're gonna see it pop over. Okay, so now I wanna look at in progress, right? Because that's our other option, okay? So if you see in progress, okay, it moves back to the in progress because this is not done, okay? But what I do want to do, all right, is I want to, so I'm actually going to change this, oops, my bad. I actually want to change this one back to do so you can see the problem that I'm coming up against. All right, so now I have one of these is in progress, but it's in to do when it should be in progress. So let's edit our logic a little bit here. So we're gonna say if completed task is greater than 0. So we also want to then have const in progress tasks. And then I'm gonna just copy this and I'm gonna paste it in here. And then I'm gonna change this to in progress. And so then we're gonna say if completed task is greater than 0 or in progress tasks is greater than 0. So now if I refresh my page, this moves over because I have a task that's in progress. All right, pretty cool. Okay, so then now we want to look at our projects as a whole. We want to add this here too. So let's go and get our element here, our little text element. All right, and then let's go to the projects page. All right, and then let's try to figure out where that's going to go. So it looks like it's under project.status, okay? So we are then going to add that. Okay, so now we're gonna have feature status, okay? All right, so this is when we're looping through all of them. Okay, so I think I want to start with, okay, so I'm gonna have a variable for feature count. We're gonna say that's equal to project dot features dot length, okay? And then we are going to have const completed features is going to be equal to 0. So we're going to do kind of a similar method, but at the project level now, okay? And then we are also going to do let project started equal false. Okay. All right, I guess I'll have to change that when it yells at me for not being a let. Okay, so we are going to then look at, all right, sorry, trying to think this through now. Okay, so when we loop through the features, okay, we are looking at user story count and completed, okay? So we're gonna say if feature user story count is equal to completed user stories, then we'll have feature status is equal to done, and then we will have this do completed features plus plus. And it's now mad at me because this needs to be let. Okay. Then we're going to add here project at status is going to be equal to we're going to have to repeat this logic here. Okay, so we're going to say if project status started is equal to false, then we're going to say project status is to do. All right, otherwise, if we are not going to have that, and this is going to be project status as well. So if project at feature count is equal to completed features, then the project status is done. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and refresh. So this one is to do, and it shouldn't be, but we don't have the project started done. Okay. So here we are changing feature started if any of our tasks are completed or any of our tasks are in progress. Okay. So we're going to use that as well for project started. Okay. So it's mad at me because this is not let, but I will. It's saying I'm not using, but I'm using it here. We're going to worry about that. Oh, okay, so we can just actually do feature, my bad, I forgot I made those variables because we're not actually adding them to the project. Okay, then let's refresh the page, and this project is in progress, so let's add another project. Oops. I'm going to have to just type it out apparently. This is my description of project B. It's not so cool. Create, and now we have to do. Okay, so that's looking good. I'm going to add one feature with one user story and one user task, so we can mark it as, well, two tasks, so we're going to mark it as in progress and then complete. Okay. Let's create the feature. It has 0 user stories, so we say user story 1. Okay, and then I'm not going to have another one, but I'm going to have a task. I'm going to say task 1. Okay, then I'm going to go to add a task. I'm going to say task 2. Okay, so now we have 0 tasks done, worked on in progress, or 0 projects. So it should still say to do. Perfect. All right, so then let's go ahead and refresh this. Okay, task 1 and task 2. So let's go ahead and move this to in progress and save it. And then let's refresh this page. Now it's in progress. Okay, let's put this at done. And let's put this one at done. Okay, well, let's first look at it. Okay, so yeah, now our feature is in progress. So then let's save this. Let's refresh the page. Our feature is done and our project is done. Awesome. All right, we have now successfully finished up our create project workflow. I will move on to our edit project workflow in the next one. Have a good day.